and welcome to MyCounselor.Online. I'm your host, Brittany East, and joining me today as our featured counselor is Nate Nevedal. Nate, before we jump into your very interesting article, can you take a moment to introduce yourself for those viewers who may not know you yet?
Yes. Well, I'm MyCounselor.Online. It says Nathaniel, so people are
That's true.
welcome to call me Nathan or Nate. I prefer Nate. But yes, so I have a decade of experience in Christian counseling, but also besides that, I work in Texas as a chemical dependency counselor. I'm also a military peer support specialist, so I work with like veterans, first, responders, as well as active service members. And then if, not that we're able to meet in person, but I am also an equine assisted psychotherapist. So I work with horses and people as well. So
I have never even heard of that. That's amazing.
thanks. Yes.
All right. So your article today, which it sounds like you have a big background since you do work with like the chemical dependency community, is called What is Comorbidity? So what inspired you to write this article?
Oh, it's to me, it's like a devastating, pandemic, in the world right now, where a lot of treatments are only centered on one condition. And so many things are being misdiagnosed and mistreated. So really understanding that our moods and behaviors are being influenced by more than one thing is really what gave me the initiative to write about comorbidity.
That totally makes sense. So what audience did you have in mind for reading this then?
Oh, I guess the, 5+ billion or 7+ billion people that are on the planet right now. And that's legit. We're gonna, kind of go into it a lot more, but the majority of the population, in essence, deals with, some form of probably substance use disorder, which leads into, a certain psychosis or a certain mental condition. So there's such a importance on understanding that biopsychosocial aspect of comorbidity that needs to be, recognized not only here in the States, but also all over the map.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I know you're like you said, you kind of touched on this a little bit. So why do you think it's so important for people to understand like how, because comorbidity is basically like substance abuse and mental illness are almost so like connected that you kind of you can't take one without the other, considering the other. So why do you think it's important for the general population to understand that?
Well, let's take a little example, like where somebody may have a certain feeling or something going on in their life. So they're trying to, let's say, get off alcohol. They get off alcohol, they go to AA meetings, they're trying their best, and then noticing I'm relapsing. Like, why is that? It's those underlying issues within the subconscious as well as the body that have been influenced through this damage that we've done to it. And just them understanding that one process may, band-aid it. We have to really pull those band-aids off and get down to that, really deep hurt, that deep understanding that's really causing those effects. We can see that with the opiate crisis that's happened. The relapse is after 6 months, almost guaranteed that the individual is going to relapse.
Wow.
That's a huge thing in our society that we have to start combating. It's because they're only treating the drug aspect of it, but none of the underlying issues, which is, very, very important for us to, consider as, therapists and counselors.
No, that makes sense. So yeah, I kind of gave a good example of how how the substance abuse is kind of related. So are there like typical like mental illnesses that tend to be comorbid with substance abuse?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot. Now it's not only substance abuse. You can also have underlying dual diagnosis with, let's say OCD.
Okay.
OCD is also deals with the fact of it's a logical aspect of, a disorder, but it can get, you can feel depressed and have major anxiety. But let's just kind of dive into the SUD, like the substance use disorder. You're going to be dealing with, on top of the bio aspects of your body, those chemicals change how all your body influences your mind, your mood. So once you remove all that, your mood and behavior like leaned on that. And
Yeah.
now I can't lean on him. So the family's impacted, your friends are impacted, work's impacted, and then you're just snowballing, which
Mm.
is a huge thing in society right now, where just people are just thriving, and then they're striving towards something to get better, but they're
Yeah.
just getting worse and worse and worse.
Mm.
So it's a big problem we have right now.
Can you maybe expand a little bit further, like how our brains can change when it's repeatedly under the influence of drugs?
Oh, 100%. So our brains have like, our mind is built on like four facets. And this
Okay.
is Dr. Dan Siegel talks about this in INPB, which is like internal neurology of the personal body.
Mhm.
And when we talk about that, what happens is we have the first facet is our consciousness. And then the second one is the subject experience. That's that emotional texture that we get from something that happens that like impacts us.
Okay.
And that impact is that information that we not only take in, but we feel. And then not only that information between like you and I right now, as
Right.
you feel me speak and what's going on inside your body. So that information, like say a substance is in your body right now, you're interpreting that experience, and then something's causing interaction within you, not only your mind, but your heart and your
Mhm.
spirit. Let's just say somebody that's on an opiate or
Right.
alcohol, and they're intoxicated in that drug. When they experience that event, that impacts that trauma inside of them.
Mm.
And then what happens is the fourth facet is the mind is this emerging self-organization. And what that means is the emergence means once it comes out, I can't go back to that original state.
Okay.
So I kind of go back through and try it again. And I keep on trying it again. And it's this self-organization that the body does. But when we're impacted by a substance or a mental condition, it's built on a rough foundation.
Yeah.
So I'm self-organizing back to this brokenness, and I
Mm.
just can't understand why I'm not getting better.
Wow.
I stopped alcohol, but I'm still depressed and I have anxiety. I stopped my pills, and I'm still, my body hurts and I can't get over that sensation. So what happens is when the body gets to that point, we have to go to that broken foundation and restructure it,
Okay.
rebuild it, so that when we do emerge again and self-organize, it's being built on a more solid foundation, which is that treatment process, that working towards not relapsing. And that takes a lot of time, and
Yeah.
this isn't a one and done situation.
No, it sounds like it. So, like when someone has like, so I know usually when you start therapy, there's like, what are our goals? Do you like, how do you typically approach that? Do you go for like the substance abuse part first? Do you go for like figuring out kind of, or do you like search for that broken foundation first? Like, how do you approach, like, what are your goals when you start therapy with someone with a dual diagnosis?
Well, the first thing that we do is, which is vital, and this is a failing effort in society right now.
Okay.
And I may get in trouble for that, but that's okay. But treatment centers out there are failing.
Mm.
They're failing because they're not screening and they're not diagnosing properly.
Mm.
They're screening for a single element, and then they're like, okay, I got you, come on in, we'll treat that,
Yeah.
let you go. And that's a huge problem. That goes back to that
Yeah.
self-emerging. Like okay, I must be okay. Well, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
So the first step when we deal with dual diagnosis is the screening process and assessment. We have to really dive down into your history. And that's kind of where we come in with MCO in our first
Yeah.
session is just, look, I really need to know about you,
Mm.
because I know you're coming in for this, but I want to let you know just in case it's more than just that.
Yeah.
And so say we dump all this stuff in a big melting pot, we got to take each piece out one at a time. Otherwise, the purity inside this is still going to be flawed.
Yeah.
And we want to pull those flaws out one at a time that the world caused, so that when we emerge again and be recreated through this process of therapy, that foundation is rebuilt. So that screening process in the beginning is the key of treating all those diagnoses. And so that we do have actually a better lifestyle plan versus just trying to hit the one little, apple on the tree.
No, that totally makes sense. And I appreciate the like more holistic approach, because I feel like, humans are complicated beings. It's not like, oh, like put you through a system, one and done, you can just walk
Right.
through.
Mhm.
And obviously, people dealing with this, they have a lot of like internal like stuff going on that makes life very hard. In your article, though, you kind of talk about how it can even be really difficult for families supporting someone who has a comorbid diagnosis. Why do you think it is so difficult for family or even friends to support someone who is battling with so many things?
Oh, that's a great question. Families hurt so much when they have somebody that's, they feel is different
Mm,
because shame.
wow.
No one wants, we go to church and we sit in the church and we put on this pretty mask and this pretty face. Hey, everybody, I'm lovey, everything good. And then we go home and it's a crap show.
Yeah.
Life is terrible. Life is tough. My daughter, my son are fighting. They're mad when I take their cell phone. But really what comes down to it is it starts at that young age and it leads into depression, anxiety. So the parents are trying to work with it. And our society is very busy. It's hard time being parents, right? You got 2 little ones.
Yeah.
That's tough, and then balancing work-life balance. So when a family comes into and they have this impact, let's just take alcohol. And the reason why I want to talk about alcohol a lot is, just so everyone that's understanding this is 5.5% of the entire population of the world has a substance use disorder.
Wow.
That's over 275 million people.
I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah. Now, how many people in the world actually drink alcohol? 2.3 billion.
Yeah.
And this was, the WHO indicated this in 2019, which I mean, it's close enough within 5 years to kind of figure that it's probably more. But that's 43% of the population is taking a, antidepressant, which is not really an antidepressant, and consuming it. And now that process starts affecting the body, and there's some things called like epigenetic inheritance, where our DNA is actually getting influenced by this. We talk about fetal alcohol syndrome. That's a severe case, but it goes into the body, like for instance, a mother, and then that baby takes it in.
Yeah.
And then even the fetus eggs inside that female baby can be impacted by
Wow.
what's going on. Yeah. So say grandma lived through a depression and ma was in her womb, you also got affected by that. And that epigenetic inheritance that attaches to your DNA, I'm a little nerdy right now, kind of like can pass on. And that's kind of like the fruit of a generational curse, right?
Yeah.
So if our parents are drinking, then I see it okay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I can tolerate that.
Yeah.
Which then leads into that family going, you're different than us.
Wow.
Here comes the shame. Here comes the guilt. Here comes the house being divided.
Mm-hmm.
And now the family sits there going, well, I didn't have this problem with mom and dad. Then it must be your problem. So then the family just gets stuck in this constant chaos of just being separate. And really, that's the key, is learning how to integrate together.
Okay.
And that's what we're doing in therapy. That I talked about, that information flow between us. When it feels good and I feel like I'm cared for, then naturally I want to survive.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing, especially younger women in society that deal with dual diagnosis are 200% more likely to have severe mental illness, major depression, major anxiety, which leads then topples onto that, pill popping, like I need to just deal with it. I'd rather just take something to not deal with it.
Yeah.
And we can even look at colleges now where students are taking, stimulants to keep up with pace, and then when they get off it, they're devastated because they're not running at 10 RPMs,
Yeah.
and now their body has been impacted, so, back to the point, I got tailspin there a little bit, but the major thing that families deal with is shame and guilt. I don't know what to do. I failed as a parent. Helping. And then that shame leads into them pushing that individual aside and trying to cope with it. So the image that the world sees them in is not really what's going on at home. So it's such a hardship on the families these days. But the biggest advice for them is just, you got to get over that. You got to get over that shame and guilt, because our children are being affected by it. And it's so important for us to just sit down and say, hey, I don't care what John Smith said or Susie and what my status is here, but I need help, or my kids need help.
Yeah.
And that's a huge impact. So.
No, that totally makes sense. And yeah, to kind of like bringing in humility into it, which is so difficult. And because we don't like, I mean, at least for me, I don't like making mistakes or feeling like, I messed up. And, I feel like sometimes a lot of these people are in turmoil. So they feel like they're trying to fix it, maybe with a substance that maybe even starts out as not an issue, and then it becomes an issue. And then it feels hard because it's like, well, I was trying to fix it.
Right.
And things went awry. So yeah, that totally makes sense. Like everything that you shared. So for everyone who's like watching this, is there like a final piece of advice you would share with them? Maybe if they are struggling with the comorbidity, or they're trying to like love someone through that?
Yeah, you said it. Just love them. I mean, it starts with loving ourselves and understanding that shame and guilt. It's okay, but you don't have to do it alone. And that's the biggest thing is, like, that's why I love our counselors here, is just that love that we pour into everybody, and that's what we really need right now, especially in this time and age is, with COVID, we all got separated.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It was terrible. I mean, and now we're just learning to integrate again. And that's just what I ask everyone is start integrating again. Just come back. We're made to be together.
Yeah.
We're not made to isolate. And that enemy that whispers always wants us to be isolated and alone. And we're not really made that way. We're made to connect and be together, even when we feel like society doesn't accept us. That's a huge thing. So just, the families, individuals out there, I just wish they understand that we do care, we do love them. And that's the biggest thing is just don't be so alone and come in, or come to anybody. And it's just a big thing out there is just understanding that you are loved.
Well, Nate, thank you so much for sharing your heart. It's so clear that you just really just like want to pour compassion on people, want people to feel not alone, like what you said, and just maybe give them like even a little bit of hope to like make it through like anything that they're going through. So I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us today.
Well, thanks, Brindy. Absolutely.
And thank you everyone who joined us today, taking the time to listen. We are so grateful for all your support, and even not even just support, but just getting to give back to you. Obviously as counselors, like we love getting to connect with people, and the counselors love sharing their wisdom, and just showing you like anything that we can talk about. There's nothing that is not able to be talked about here at MCO. If you haven't checked out our other videos, you can find us on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/lovemycounselor. On Instagram, you can search Love My Counselor and find us that way as well. And on YouTube, we have a whole channel and a history of videos for any mental health topic you are interested in learning about. And you can search youtube.com/MyCounselor Online Christian Counseling. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time for My Counselor Online.